In the annals of American presidential history, no administration has ever looked quite like Donald Trump's when it came to the people closest to power. Walking the halls of the West Wing between 2017 and 2021 were not just traditional political advisors, seasoned diplomats, or party loyalists who had spent decades climbing Washington's ladder. Instead, the most influential voices shaping policy, managing crises, and controlling access to the president included his daughter Ivanka Trump and her husband Jared Kushner, both of whom held the vague but powerful title of senior advisor to the president. Alongside them operated a rotating cast of aides, loyalists, and unconventional figures who had followed Trump from his business empire and campaign into the White House. This inner circle wielded influence that extended far beyond their official titles, making decisions that affected millions of Americans and reshaping how presidential power operates in the modern era. Understanding who these people were, how they gained their positions, and what they actually did reveals essential truths about Trump's presidency and his approach to leadership. The presence of family members in positions of significant power wasn't entirely unprecedented in American history. John F. Kennedy had appointed his brother Robert as Attorney General, and presidential relatives have long played informal advisory roles. But Jared and Ivanka's arrangement was different in scope and visibility. They weren't heading a single department or playing behind-the-scenes roles. They were positioned at the center of policy development across domestic and international issues, from criminal justice reform to Middle East peace negotiations. Their security clearances became a source of controversy when reports emerged that career officials had concerns about granting them access to classified information, concerns that were reportedly overruled. From the beginning, their presence signaled that Trump would run his presidency the way he had run his business empire, with family at the core, trust placed in blood relationships over political credentials, and loyalty valued above traditional qualifications. Jared Kushner arrived at the White House with his own impressive business background, having taken over his family's real estate company, Kushner Companies, and expanded it significantly. He was 36 years old when Trump took office, a Harvard graduate and successful businessman who had been married to Ivanka since 2009. Kushner had played a crucial role in Trump's 2016 campaign, particularly in digital strategy and data analytics, helping to target advertising with a precision that surprised political professionals. Trump trusted Kushner's judgment and intelligence, often turning to him for advice on matters ranging from campaign strategy to policy development. Inside the White House, Kushner's portfolio grew to encompass an astonishing range of responsibilities: Middle East peace, relations with China, Mexico, and Canada, criminal justice reform, the opioid crisis, technology modernization, and more. Critics joked that Kushner was responsible for solving every major problem in America and the world, but the breadth of his assignments reflected Trump's confidence in him and his position as perhaps the single most influential aide in the entire administration.
Ivanka Trump's role was more complex and carefully managed. A successful businesswoman in her own right, with her own fashion brand and business ventures before entering the White House, Ivanka positioned herself as a moderating influence, focused on issues like workforce development, women's economic empowerment, and paid family leave. She cultivated an image as the administration's pragmatic voice, someone who could work with Democrats and Republicans alike, and who brought a more measured approach to policy than some of her father's more combative advisors. Her office in the West Wing, her presence at high-level meetings, including sessions with foreign leaders, and her active role in diplomatic events gave her visibility and influence that went far beyond ceremonial first-daughter functions. She was involved in policy development, participated in decision-making processes, and had the kind of direct access to the president that other officials could only dream of achieving. The power of Jared and Ivanka extended beyond their official duties into something more fundamental. They controlled access to Trump himself. In any White House, the people who determine who gets time with the president, who sees which documents, and who participates in which meetings wield enormous informal power. Jared and Ivanka, by virtue of family relationships and physical proximity, they lived with their children in the Colorama neighborhood of Washington but were regularly at the White House, had constant access that no chief of staff or cabinet member could match. They could reach Trump at any time, could offer their perspectives on any issue, and could shape his thinking in ways that other advisors simply couldn't. This created tension throughout the administration, with other officials sometimes unsure whether they were dealing with the president's actual views or positions influenced by his family members. Behind Jared and Ivanka, Trump's inner circle included figures who had been with him through his business career and campaign, people whose loyalty had been tested over years rather than just through the political vetting process. Hope Hicks, who began working for the Trump Organization in her 20s and became one of Trump's most trusted communications advisors, exemplified this pattern. She understood Trump's voice, his instincts, and his moods better than almost anyone, having traveled with him constantly during the campaign. Her influence came not from policy expertise, but from her ability to interpret Trump for others and to manage his messaging in ways that preserved his authentic voice while minimizing political damage. When she briefly left the administration in 2018, her absence was felt immediately, and Trump eventually brought her back for the final year of his presidency, demonstrating how much he valued aides who truly understood him. Stephen Miller represented a different type of inner circle member, the ideological warrior who shared Trump's instincts on immigration and cultural issues and could translate those instincts into actual policy. Miller had been with Trump since the campaign, writing speeches and developing the hardline immigration positions that became central to Trump's political identity. As a senior advisor, Miller worked on executive orders, policy initiatives, and speeches, becoming the architect of controversial measures like the travel ban affecting several majority Muslim countries and the family separation policy at the southern border. Miller's influence stemmed from his alignment with Trump's core beliefs and his willingness to fight for those positions against internal opposition. He survived multiple chiefs of staff and cabinet turnovers, remaining a constant presence because Trump valued his loyalty and shared his policy vision.
Kellyanne Conway brought yet another dimension to the inner circle: media mastery and political combat skills. As the first woman to successfully manage a presidential campaign when she guided Trump to victory in 2016, Conway earned a level of trust and respect from Trump that translated into significant influence as counselor to the president. She was a constant presence on television, defending Trump's positions and attacking his critics with a combative style that Trump appreciated. But her real power came from her political instincts, her ability to read public opinion, and her willingness to tell Trump truths that others might sugarcoat. Conway understood the Republican base, understood media dynamics, and understood Trump himself, making her one of the few advisors who could successfully push back on the president's instincts when she believed he was making a political mistake. The chief of staff position, traditionally one of the most powerful roles in any White House, functioned differently under Trump precisely because of the family dynamics and the strength of the inner circle. Reince Priebus, John Kelly, Mick Mulvaney, and Mark Meadows each served as chief of staff during Trump's presidency, and each struggled with the reality that they couldn't fully control access to the president or enforce traditional White House discipline when family members had independent authority. John Kelly, a retired Marine general, reportedly clashed with Jared and Ivanka repeatedly, viewing them as problematic for their security clearance issues and their tendency to operate outside normal chains of command. But Trump consistently sided with his family over his chiefs of staff, making it clear where ultimate loyalty lay and real power resided. The role of informal advisors outside the official White House structure added another layer to Trump's inner circle. Trump regularly consulted with Fox News personalities like Sean Hannity, spoke frequently with former campaign managers like Corey Lewandowski and David Bossie, even after they left official roles, and maintained relationships with business friends and associates who could reach him by phone. This network of informal advisors meant that official policy processes were sometimes bypassed, with Trump making decisions based on conversations that didn't appear on any White House schedule or official record. This frustrated career officials and even Trump's own appointed advisors, but it reflected Trump's business background, where informal networks and personal relationships often mattered more than organizational charts. The power dynamics within Trump's inner circle were constantly shifting, with different advisors rising and falling in influence based on results, loyalty, and Trump's changing moods and priorities. Steve Bannon, Trump's former campaign CEO and initially his chief strategist in the White House, was once considered part of the inner circle, but fell from favor and was pushed out within months, reportedly in part due to tensions with Jared and Ivanka, and in part because Trump felt Bannon was getting too much credit in the media for the administration's direction. Omarosa Manigault-Newman, a reality television personality from The Apprentice who joined the White House, was eventually dismissed amid controversy. These departures showed that proximity to Trump and even past loyalty didn't guarantee permanent status within the inner circle. Performance, discretion, and continued usefulness mattered constantly. National security advisors and cabinet secretaries found themselves navigating a White House where family members and trusted aides sometimes had more influence than their formal positions suggested they should. When Jared Kushner developed relationships with foreign leaders, including Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, and conducted Middle East diplomacy, he was effectively operating in areas that would traditionally fall to the Secretary of State or National Security Advisor. This created coordination challenges and sometimes policy confusion, with foreign governments uncertain about who actually spoke for the administration on particular issues.
Trump seemed comfortable with this ambiguity, perhaps viewing it as a negotiating advantage, but it reflected the unusual power structure he had created, where traditional bureaucratic hierarchies mattered less than personal relationships and demonstrated loyalty.
The inner circle's influence on major policy decisions was substantial and sometimes determinative. Jared Kushner's work on criminal justice reform, which resulted in the First Step Act being signed into law in 2018, showed how a trusted advisor could bridge partisan divides and deliver legislative achievements. Kushner worked with both Republicans and Democrats, convinced Trump to support the measure despite some conservative opposition, and helped secure its passage, a genuine policy accomplishment that might not have happened without his specific involvement and influence with the president. Similarly, Ivanka's advocacy for the child tax credit expansion and her focus on workforce development programs resulted in real policy changes that affected millions of Americans, demonstrating that inner circle influence could translate into substantive governance outcomes beyond just political maneuvering. The COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 revealed both the strengths and limitations of Trump's inner circle approach to governance. Jared Kushner took on a significant role in the pandemic response, working on supply chain issues, helping to coordinate with private companies, and participating in task force meetings alongside public health officials. Supporters praised his business approach to solving logistical problems, while critics questioned why someone without public health expertise was so central to pandemic response. The tension reflected broader questions about Trump's governance model, whether business skills and loyal advisors could substitute for traditional expertise, or whether crises like pandemics required different kinds of knowledge and experience than Trump's inner circle possessed. The 2020 election and its aftermath showed the inner circle at its most divided. Reports from inside the White House revealed that advisors split into camps: those who encouraged Trump to accept the election results and move forward, and those who supported his claims of election fraud and his efforts to contest the outcome. Jared and Ivanka were reportedly among those who privately acknowledged Biden's victory earlier than Trump publicly did, but they maintained loyalty to the president and didn't break publicly with his position. Other advisors, including lawyers like Rudy Giuliani, who had become part of Trump's orbit, pushed more aggressive strategies. The inner circle's inability to present a unified front or to convince Trump to concede gracefully reflected the limits of even the most trusted advisor's influence when Trump's instincts and beliefs pointed in a different direction. After leaving the White House in January 2021, the Trump inner circle dispersed but maintained connections to Trump's ongoing political operation. Jared and Ivanka notably stepped back from politics, announcing they wouldn't be involved in Trump's 2024 campaign in the same way they had been in 2016 and during his presidency. This decision surprised some observers who assumed they would remain central to Trump's political future, but it reflected their desire to return to private life and their own business interests. Other inner circle members took different paths. Stephen Miller founded America First Legal to continue fighting for Trump-aligned policies. Hope Hicks returned to the private sector, and Kellyanne Conway remained a political commentator and analyst. The dispersion showed that while Trump's inner circle had been powerful during his presidency, it was held together by his position and authority rather than being a permanent political structure.
The legacy of Trump's inner circle approach to presidential power remains a subject of intense debate among political scientists, historians, and observers. Critics argue that relying so heavily on family members and personal loyalists over experienced government officials and subject matter experts represented a dangerous break from norms that exist for good reasons, to ensure accountability, diverse perspectives, and expertise in complex policy areas. The security clearance controversies, the blurred lines between public and private interests, and the difficulty foreign governments had in understanding who actually spoke for the administration all represented real problems with the model Trump created. Yet supporters counter that Trump's inner circle delivered policy achievements, brought fresh perspectives uncorrupted by Washington groupthink, and demonstrated loyalty that prevented the kind of leaks and internal sabotage that plagued other aspects of his administration. What's undeniable is that Trump's inner circle fundamentally changed how we think about presidential advising and the role of family in politics. Future presidents will have to navigate the precedent Trump set. Can family members serve in powerful advisory roles without violating anti-nepotism laws or ethical norms? Should presidents rely primarily on political professionals and subject matter experts, or is there value in surrounding yourself with people whose loyalty is personal rather than ideological? The questions Trump's inner circle raises about power, influence, trust, and governance will shape debates about presidential leadership for years to come. Whether you view the model as innovative and effective or problematic and norm-breaking, it represented a distinctive approach that reflected Trump's business background, his emphasis on loyalty, and his belief that traditional Washington wisdom often got things wrong. The story of Jared, Ivanka, and the aides who formed Trump's inner circle is ultimately a story about power, who has it, how it's exercised, and what it can accomplish. These were individuals who wielded enormous influence over American policy and politics, not because they won elections or rose through party ranks, but because they had the president's trust and access to his ear at crucial moments. They shaped decisions on war and peace, economic policy and social issues, judicial appointments and international agreements. Understanding their roles, their relationships, and their impact helps us understand not just Trump's presidency, but also the evolving nature of executive power in modern America. Their story reveals how personal relationships, family bonds, and demonstrated loyalty can translate into policy influence and raises important questions about whether this represents democracy adapting to new realities or dangerous concentration of power in unelected hands. This deep investigation into Trump's inner circle has explored the personalities, power dynamics, and policy impact of the advisors closest to one of America's most consequential presidents. From Jared and Ivanka's unprecedented roles to the loyal aides who shaped messaging and strategy, from the informal advisors who influenced decisions from outside the White House to the internal conflicts that revealed the limits of even the most trusted counselor's influence, we've examined how Trump's approach to governance through a tight inner circle transformed the presidency. If this comprehensive look at the power structures within Trump's White House has given you new understanding of how decisions actually got made during those 4 years, if it's helped you see beyond the headlines to the personal relationships and strategic calculations that drove American policy, then please help this channel continue producing this level of in-depth political analysis. Hit the like button to ensure more viewers can access content that goes beyond partisan narratives to explore the actual mechanics of presidential power. Subscribe so you never miss our next investigation into the people, moments, and forces shaping American democracy. Your support directly enables us to keep creating thoughtful documentary content that treats these important stories with the seriousness and nuance they deserve. Thank you for engaging with this deep dive into Trump's inner circle, and we'll see you in the next documentary, where we continue uncovering the untold stories of American politics.